Good afternoon, everyone. I'm 3 weeks into the role, so I'm covered by the 3-week rule, okay, which means I can pretty much say whatever I want. Okay, so we'll be clear. This is my second visit to Rotterdam. The first one was on a 4-meter yacht that had lost its engine and was sailing into the port of Rotterdam. Any of you have seen the port of Rotterdam? That was quite an exciting experience. In a very small boat with very big super tankers, and I learnt some Dutch words that evening that I can't ask anyone to translate for me, I'm pretty sure. I found that very good training for starting at EFPIA, possibly. So I am definitely delighted to be here. So what I wanted to share this morning was just some perspectives, maybe a little from experience of managing this process and project in the UK, but also my very first impressions on what some of the issues are across Europe. And the first thing I did want to emphasize, I think, is just the importance of the relationship between industry and the clinicians and the health professionals that we work with. It is a driver of patient care, it's a driver of advancements in medicines, and it is critical to their future. And the second thing I wanted to recognise was the fantastic work that's been done by our member associations to bring this forward, and I'm very keen to understand how we can help to support you going forward. Okay. So I just wanted to say a little bit about the environmental context. It's a very often quoted figure, but 90% of the world's data has been created in the last couple of years. I think as an industry we're about to add to that figure, perhaps in some degree. But I think it is clear that we are living in a data-led world, that actually the societal expectation around transparency has certainly changed and increased. I spoke to my daughter this morning, who's 6. I said, I'm in Rotterdam. She said, I know, Dad. So that's quite impressive. She said, I followed your phone on the iPad that's in the lounge. So I said, please don't teach your mum how to do that. But I'm very impressed with your IT skills. That's fantastic. We live in a social media world, and as I think Loda pointed out earlier, there is a new generation coming through that will post their romantic intentions online. They will post what they had for breakfast online. There is a different culture, I think, coming through society as a whole, but perhaps medical professions as well. And the move to greater transparency built on, I suppose, some pretty big issues that brought transparency to the fore, that rocked some of our confidence in what were formerly pretty trusted institutions, has led to this kind of global development of transparency, of which EFPIA is part, and of which the national associations and members of EFPIA are part too. So, that said, I think we are all aware that various, or all of us, feel at different points on that hill, on our respective skateboards, I think, and that there are certainly challenges ahead, both from an industry perspective, but this must make no sense to you guys in this row at all. Sorry. There's challenges from an industry side. How do we get a level of consistency? Do we use the same taxonomy? How do we get very big organizations and big financial systems to be able to integrate and deliver the data that's needed and required by the code and so on? And we certainly recognize from my interactions with healthcare professionals that there is quite a journey to go. This is new. There is concern about the impact and how this will impact not only on them individually, but also on the public perception of health professionals as a whole. A number of the speakers have mentioned this inherent tension, I suppose, a little bit between transparency and privacy. And I have my own views, and I'm certainly not a legal expert on this, but it is something that we've discussed in lots of different fora. And I think the first thing to highlight is the risks of non-disclosure. Because I think certainly from a health professional side, we saw that in conversations with health professional organisations as a potential major risk to the credibility and the reputation of the health professional side. If we are delivering a project, and say I go back to my UK experience, and that aggregate figure that's just been mentioned is a substantial figure, then that is not going to reflect well on either side, and there is significant risk attached to that, and how we address it over the next 18 months is going to be of critical importance. This was explained, I suppose, by our legal colleague far better than I could. But I think there is a kind of spectrum around managing consent here with, in very simple terms, and the least resource intensive and creates the least risk overall is this public interest argument. Because companies don't have to invest huge sums in managing that process and all the contractual things that probably make the legal community very sad. Because it would be simple and a lot less sort of contractual work involved. But as we move down that scale to where we've got a very kind of individual contract by contract written consent approach, we see an increase in complexity and resource and time that's involved in delivering that. And I think we really need to think about where we are on that spectrum, both in terms of the reputation and the integrity of the project as a whole, but also in the investment, the time, resource, and so on, that all of us on both sides of the equation have to put in. So, how do we approach it? So, I think we need a change in culture, perhaps, over time. I think if we're here in 4 years still arguing about the best ways of grabbing consent and how does that work, then we've probably lost some of the battle. So I live way up on the west coast of Scotland, and there are two things that are quite popular where I live. I live in the middle of nowhere. So one is tractors, and the other one is whiskey. Okay, bear with me. So the result of those two things being popular is often this, right? It used to be, or at least 20 years ago, that happened to be the case. But actually, you can see how changes happened 20 years ago, and now this just doesn't happen. To the generation that have come through, there's no understanding that one may have gone down this route in previous years. Over time, this became not the way to do things. And I think transparency, there is an element of something similar. That as we attend congresses in the next 2 and 5 and 10 years, and actually we know who's disclosed and who's not disclosed, those numbers will shrink. Because culturally, this will, over time, if we look at the direction of travel over the last 5 years and what's likely to be over the next 10 years, it is hopefully going to become the professionally accepted norm, both for industry and the health professional community. And how do we achieve that? Well, I think some of it's about leadership. I think we need leaders in the industry to stand up and say, this is, the direction of travel, and this is why, and what the rationale is, and be able to have those conversations with stakeholders and with the health professional community. And we need leaders, and we have some of them here today within the health professional community, again, prepared to talk through concerns, discuss those issues, and then talk to colleagues and with colleagues about what they are. And I think the other area for me is that if we, when it comes to disclosure, as a health professional and an industry, describe our relationship in completely different ways, that's going to cause issues. Actually, we have this relationship, and if we are able to collaborate in how we communicate about that relationship, what its impact is on patients, why it exists, all of these points, then that done collaboratively will be a lot more powerful and a lot less risky. I'm getting the nod. Again, 3-week rule. So a few other things. The Mind the Gap, I think we've seen there's going to be huge differences between country, between company, and so on. So we need to think about why those exist. How do we explain them? There may be very valid reasons, but I think as people look across Europe, we need to understand that picture. For those of you who can't read that says, I jumped through a window screen to chase a cow. And again, bear with me, it's from my favourite website where owners put up the misdemeanours of their dogs. Okay? Now, the reason I have it there is, my understanding is, even though it's been declared online, the cow doesn't feel any better. Okay, so where I'm going with this is I think over time what we need to do as well as transparency is understand the context within those disclosures are made. We need to be sure and confident that our relationships, the way that we work together, the way that we work with people are fit for purpose, not just now, but going forward. And I know that companies and member associations are continually re-examining that and evolving that relationship. Okay, from an EFPIA perspective, I understand that actually one of the areas that we really want to move forward is how do we support you as companies, you as member associations, you as health professional organisations in talking about this issue and engaging with people on this issue. And that's our aim, or certainly my aim in coming into this new role. So I think we can create some resources, we can disseminate the great work that we've seen with some stuff from Germany, from Poland, there's stuff there from LEM in France, there's stuff from the ABPI, we can do all of that. But I think actually talking to people is of paramount importance, and our aim this year is to really be out at congresses and different events, meeting people. If you want us to come and meet people on your behalf or with you, please come and grab me afterwards, after lunch, and we'd be really happy and keen to do that. So I will finish there because Dwayne's quite big and quite close. But thank you for your time. The thing I'd say to finish with is that I don't think transparency is any comment on the issues of the past. I think transparency is about preparing this important relationship for now and for the next 10 years, and that's what's critical about it. Thank you very much.